The Paranormal 60 presents this season on Ghosts of Devil's Perch, Episode 2, The Axeman. The Cabbage Patch, a prominent part of an old town, a place where the forgotten went to live. In this area, there was a lot of tragedy. There was a lot of hopelessness. And there was murder. Tonight, we'll discuss this case in Episode 2, and yes, when I hit the ground after I felt a ghostly attack. We'll talk about that and more. Stay tuned. Our special guests tonight, Mackenzie Coe and Chris Fisk. Next, right here on the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
You won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
And we are all about the supernatural here. Hello and welcome, my little darklings. Tonight, we do a recap of Episode 2 of the Ghosts of Devil's Perch. That's right. Our team, K.D. Stafford, Cindy, Kaza, and myself, were sent to the great town of Butte, Montana, to investigate an uptick in strange supernatural activity that was taking place throughout the town. And this was, as I promised last week, one of the more impactful episodes of the season for me. But it's not the only one. Episode rather. Episode 3, I have a very interesting situation. We'll talk a little bit later with K.D. Stafford, who will be here, and we'll show you a little sneak peek from that episode. Our guests tonight, as I said, our good friend and mentor, historian, former high school teacher, and all-around good guy, Chris Fisk. Good to have you back, Chris. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me back, Dave. It's my honor.
All right. Well, let's talk about this next guest that we're bringing on. Maybe you can, I'm sure you're going to give me a much better introduction than I would have created. Talk to us a little bit about Mackenzie Coe, who, for those of you watching the episode, might be surprised to find out she is not 12 years old.
No, unfortunately, she does look like it on occasion. She's, as we'd say in Butte, she's a little teeny tiny bug. But that little teeny tiny bug has an incredible mind. Mackenzie Co, at least for me, I think we met 8 years ago. She was a student at Butte High School. She was president of a club that we have at Butte High School called the Montana History Club. And from there, of course, with history comes hauntings. And it got to a point, hauntings in Butte, and struggled to keep up with it. We needed help. And a natural step to that was Mackenzie Co, who was an incredible tour guide as well as historian. And she's been a great hand to us at Butte High School since her graduation, especially in the area of the Cabbage Patch and hauntings. You know, it's such a great hook for kids. And we've been privileged to certainly have her. And as you know, a big part of the Cabbage Patch. And because of that, what occurred at the Cabbage Patch. She has experienced things. She's an experienced paranormal investigator. To be quite frank with you, one of the best that we have in Butte. She's got a personal connection with a haunting of a little girl at the patch. I don't know if we'll get into it or not. We call her Tess. Her actual name is Ethel Gill. And, a lot of times this haunting will not react to any males that go in there. But you take Mackenzie Co in there and you would think that they were long lost buddies from years ago. So when we have to have 100% hit, we call Mackenzie Co.
Let's bring her on right now. Mackenzie, welcome to the Paranormal 60.
Thank you.
It's great to have you
back.
Doing great. How about you guys?
We're doing
excellent.
Well.
I had to laugh when we get the call, right? I mean, this is, within our first week of this, and we're wrapping up, just trying to get through the first experience that we had over at the Clark Chateau and still processing all the information we collected, kind of getting to know the lay of the land. And Fisk calls me in this panic there's something going on at the Cabbage Patch. Get there. And at first I'm like, all right, we hop out. And then what the hell is a Cabbage Patch? I had to call him back for directions as we're racing there.
I remember.
Now, I do want to tell people that when you film, again, we're filming 5 days a week, 12 to 15 hour shifts a day filming, and it all has to be pared down to 42 minutes. And one of my favorite scenes did not make this episode. And I will tell you, jokingly, at the beginning, Mackenzie, talking about how small you are, you look like a kid to me. First of all, I thought, why the hell does Fisk have like a 12-year-old here in the middle of the night setting up, right? But I have, Fisk is a sweetheart of a man. He's about half my size, and that sucker can move like nobody, like a cannonball. When that truck came squealing in, he came flying out of that truck and hollering. That was one of my favorite moments, because part of me was like, I'm watching a superhero dad run to the rescue of one of his favorite kids. He came charging, and I wish that would have made the episode, because it was so charming to see the care that Fisk has for you. But we come into this location, and Fisk, give me just a quick synopsis, if you will, of what. Well, you know what? Actually, you've had a lot of chance to talk. Yeah. Let's let Mackenzie do this. Mackenzie, talk to us about the Cabbage Patch.
So the Cabbage Patch, it was our old homeless district. So it was the roughest of the rough. It was your prostitutes, your drug lords, and then also anybody who didn't have a home within Butte. So you would see a lot of miners' wives and children. If their father/husband had died in the mines, you would see a lot of families in there too. I think our record number is 12 to a shack. And if you can see in the episodes, the shacks aren't that big. The four of us, I think, fit into one shack, and we were kind of crammed in there. So can you imagine 12 in one? I believe it was two sisters and their respective children.
You're exactly right, Mackenzie. And miserable. No electricity, no running water. At the time, when we dug into this, and Mackenzie can allude to it, the Butte sewage ditch ran right through the center of the patch. It was filthy disgusting. And, that being said, if you wound up in the patch, you went there on purpose because you were up to no good. Or again, as Mackenzie mentioned, you're the wife of a miner who had been killed in the mine, and that was the end of the road. And because of that, there's so much energy down in there. And as far as historical sites, Mackenzie could tell you this as well. It's incredible to think that we still have that. Standing in Butte, most communities have ripped their patches out. Pat Mohan and the Canonica family have saved that. And the reason they saved that, Dave, is because Pat Mohan's grandmother came from the patch.
Wow.
And she requested that he not tear those out. And for Butte, that's pretty prime real estate. And we're tickled to death that he hasn't. It's a nice way to extend history at multiple levels,
Yeah.
Now they're backed up to the Cabbage Patch is another one of your famous brothels.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Kenzie?
So the Myra brothel, the back borders on our Cabbage Patch. So you wouldn't have seen it really in the episode, maybe the stairs leading up to it. If you caught it sort of as you're walking in the big building where Dave had his attack. And it was originally named after Tony Canonica, his wife, Myra. And they housed it, they had lived in the bottom part, and they had housed it out to a couple and said, you can do what you want with it. And they happened to run a brothel out of it. And to this day, we say that Tony claims that he didn't know. However, he knew that the ladies paid fairly well. So
yes, they did.
Jury's
they were
out.
On time with their rent,
Well, we'll probably, God willing, if we get the call to come back to Butte, which I'd love to do, I know we've got to cover that place. Fisk was, there was a group in there that went to investigate, and Fisk said, let's go say hi and just get a chance to, pop around in there. I want to show you this place.
Yes.
And while we were there, door slammed. We caught crazy EVP right out of the gate. So I would love to get in there. What you just told me is the most of the history I know on it. So I want to stop there. But that place, let me ask this. Mackenzie, is there a spot in the town of Butte that's not haunted?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's
my apartment is haunted.
There you go. We're fortunate in the sense that we live in the largest. Sorry, cutting back to a pack a day. We live in the largest national historical landmark district in the country, and so our infrastructure is simply that which was built during the Gilded Age, and with that slow declination and mining, Dave, that's what we've utilized. And so you're talking buildings, that represent some of the biggest hellbent for leather activity in the West. And all of that still sits right in our backyard.
Well, let's dive into the episode. Obviously, we get called there because something very traumatic and strange occurred. Mackenzie, you were there prepping this location for this big event that you have annually. All the high school history nerds, history kids come there. I love that. Like I said, there was no history club like that when I was in high school. You had 100 kids there. That was insane.
Yeah. It's one of our favorite events.
Yeah, and you guys go there to set it up. You're there on your own in this area, and talk to us about how things started to unfold for you.
So I had gone there, and normally we take out like the plates and the tables so we can shove as many kids into a single shack as we can. Mostly in case if it rains, then the kids have shelter, or otherwise the kids just get to have a lot of fun. But I always take out the plates because also if they're kids and they're going to break the plates if you let them, or play with forks and knives and stab each other. And so that night I was picking up all the plates, and then I hear the sound outside, and I thought, okay, it's kind of windy, like whatever, the gate rattles. And then I heard it again, and then I heard some shuffling. And so I thought, okay, we've had people walk in while I'm here before, not a huge deal. Let me go check it out. And then that's when the bang on the door happened. And that was at the point where I was like, somebody's in the patch. Somebody's going to come get me. I got to hide. This isn't an okay moment anymore. And that's when I called Fisk. And the moment of you saying that you wish that it caught it in the episode of him running out, listening to him shout my name was golden. It was the best feeling in the world.
Oh,
yeah. We pulled in there just seconds before Fisk did.
Yes.
And we get out and we're like, is this the Cabbage Patch? And it's just this little area tucked back there, kind of hidden behind these walls. And in comes this screaming pickup truck and this crazy little cannonball busting out of it. Fisk, when you get a call from Mackenzie and she tells you something weird is happening, is your first inclination to think it's paranormal? Or were you afraid somebody had broken in?
Not in the least. We've had issues there in the past. Homeless issues. Okay. These are actual, one-room shacks. And in the past, they've had people get in there and break into there and utilize those shacks. And that's what I thought was occurring, is that she could be having an incident with someone homeless. And that can get sketchy. Okay.
Hey, I got to stop you real quick. Everybody listening just heard that in the background. So this is a good teaching moment, because people want to know how much acting is there in a reality show. The town of Butte has more loud vehicles than I've ever heard per capita. And you want to know the acting, when you feel like it felt like you were acting in that moment, it probably was, because we had to repeat the line 8 times, because every time we'd open our mouth. So Fisk, we heard, what do you think that was? And our director's like, good Lord, what was that noise? We had to shut it down and reboot. and okay, Dave, re-ask that question. I'm like, I don't even remember what it was. That noise was so alarming.
Times.
So there are
the
a few times.
Motorcycle rider. He was a legendary haunt for the shooting.
That's right.
But that was my initial thought, is that, some of the homeless had gotten in there. And to give Pat credit, during really cold weather, in Butte, guys, that can be 20, 30 below zero.
Sure.
He will open the shacks and the back of the Myra so they have heat in some place to crash. Okay, so don't freeze to death. And that's happened in Butte.
That's amazing.
But that's what I was worried about Mac. Mac doesn't panic. I've seen her on ghost hunts before. There's very little that will rattle her. So when she called, I knew it was something serious.
Mhm.
All right, Max. So now you hear this bang, but that's
Mhm.
not all. Now, in a second, are you thinking, did the wind just grab the door of the shack and rattle it? Or did you know this was different than just the wind?
I knew it was different. I've heard the wind pick up the doors. It's caught doors and kind of slammed them and shut them on me. But I've never had anything. I like started to push the door and it pushed back on me. It was like somebody came at the door. And then shortly, that's when I backed up. And I think in the reenactment, you see me grab a axe, in which I did. I thought somebody's coming at me. I got to take precaution, and I was ready for it. And as soon as I backed into the corner, I actually heard somebody say something over my shoulder. And that was when I thought, okay, either somebody's already in here or somebody's behind the shack and being surrounded. There was all sorts of things running through my head.
Yeah.
And the one thing you could tell us was it was male. Definitely male. I'm showing a clip for those of you
Yes.
just listening. I will let you know, folks, for those of you just listening to the podcast, this is one you're going to want to go see on YouTube because
Mhm.
we are going to share a lot of photographs and a lot of imagery that we're going to share throughout this episode. But yeah, you heard what sounded like a male voice. Were you able to clearly define what was said, or just that there was something masculine there
Just
with
that
you?
something was said. There was
Okay.
never any real something, but it was definitely like a male said something or like grunted or something along those lines.
Okay. And once that happens, you're used to being in the shack and setting things up, and you've
Mhm.
encountered this little girl's ghost, who I don't want to give too much information on because
Mhm.
again, I don't know what might happen for season 2, and I don't
Yeah.
want to ruin anything, and I certainly don't want Cindy to hear about this and be
Yeah, of
front
course.
loaded going forward on this. But I know that you've dealt with a little girl spirit there. um
Yes.
had you ever felt this kind of threatened before?
I felt her being threatened. I've never felt my life being threatened.
Okay. And do you feel that she was there with you that night, or was that room devoid of your normal spirits?
That night, I thought she was with me. And then once things started to kind of kick off, I think she left and went and hid on her own.
I like Courtney Williams' comment. I would have lost all bodily functions at that point. Yeah. Well, we come in there, you guys give us the lay of the land. We could tell that you were distressed. You could hear the distress in your voice
Mhm.
dealing with this moment. And Fisk was obviously rattled. Part of us wanted to keep you there. It's always a tough call because obviously something happened around you. Are you the
Mhm.
catalyst? Was there something about you? But we also understood and respected you as an individual and as somebody that
Mhm.
Fisk cared about, to get you out of there so that we could kind of get a
Yeah.
lay of the land. What's interesting, and another aspect they did not show in the episode, was we had left Cindy back in the RV while Katie and I
Mhm.
went to do this because
Yeah.
we wanted her safe. And
Yeah.
I don't know if the RV is the safest thing on the planet.
Kennedy.
Right. So we went in to check on you while Cindy was in the RV. Something she related to us later was she was picking up on a man that was in there bleeding, and he was just kind of in the RV
Oh
with
my
her.
God. Uh-huh.
And again, folks, it's not a demon growl in the background. It's Butte's trucks and muffler-less vehicles that you keep hearing. So Cindy was picking up on this character, and she said she picked up on a black male that was bleeding in the deal, but she didn't know what that was or if it had anything to do. I mean, we're obviously parked in an area. She doesn't know
Mhm.
if maybe a guy got hit by a car and he's making his presence known. But she knew something was up. When we went in and we start doing the basic sweep, which is always a very short baseline investigation, just to
Mhm.
kind of get the lay of the land. Is there anything that we're picking up on through equipment, through Cindy? And we end up having a very startling night. um
Mhm.
you left. How did you feel after you left the property? Did that apprehension go away for you, Mac, or did it stay with you for the night?
It stayed with me for a little bit, but once I kind of got into a safe environment, then it sort of settled out and I didn't feel as terrified as what I was.
Dave, if I could interject something.
Yes,
real quick.
please.
You know, this is Mackenzie Coe is now, she's on a national podcast. And of course, you've got a bazillion dedicated followers. I want you to listen to her voice. You know, she's calm, she's collected. But if you look at the film, when we first went in there, she's petrified. She is definitely distraught. And when she spoke, that was one of the first things I got, you know, hooked on, is that Mackenzie Coe, who's not only helped these kids for years doing the Cabbage Patch experience and is a history club president, but by gosh, has ghost hunted in some pretty sketchy situations. I've never heard her voice like that. She was definitely shook. So for what it's worth.
All right. Now, we kept things under wraps from both of you about what happened that night at the Cabbage Patch. Your first viewing of it was when we all got to watch the episode this past week. So KD was outside of the shack you had heard the voice in, trying to communicate using a spirit box, and was getting some really interesting hits. And did that resonate with you at all? Some of the voices and the things that were being said. Mackenzie, I'll start with you, and then Fisk will run to you as the historian.
I think some of what he was getting made sense. With the patch, there was so many people in and out of it that it's hard to ever pinpoint one person. We can sometimes identify like somebody who's around often, but we can never really pinpoint one person. So some of it made sense. Some of it was also like, oh, this is new information for us to take on a different hunt.
Yeah. You know, Dave, the kind of equipment that K.D. Stafford had, if you were going to put it on, you know, 1 to 10, that's a 10. You know, this guy is so anchored in with the electronics and the philosophies, the science behind paranormal hunting. The things that we were hearing were fantastic. And as Max said, some of it was surprising, some of it was not. We knew of one, you know, solid haunting in there, that of the little girl. But all of a sudden, you know, sometimes when we're hunting, and I think Mac would agree, what we call a dark entity, something meaner shows up. And Tess is amazing because she'll shut down right out of the blue. And the atmosphere, and Dave, you and I talked about this. Sorry, I'm pointing that teacher thing again that you guys all gave me guff for. But the atmosphere, you can almost taste it. It's that aggressive and that blunt. And kind of like sitting in a mall watching people, all of a sudden you get a good feeling when you see, you know, a mother and a child or someone for no reason, that good energy. And then that same thing, you see someone, you don't know them, but bam, something inside says something's wrong. And we have experienced that a number of times at the patch. Mac, I think you'd agree. But by gosh, you know, that night, that took it to a whole new level. Well,
before we get to the experience I had, there was another scary night you guys had at the patch, right? And can you tell us a little bit about that? And was Mackenzie there for that? Who had that?
She wasn't. Another friend of ours, a ghost hunting friend, Jim McCarthy, was. We had a group of individuals in there, and we were in what we call the Bachelor Shack, and we were getting very good responses. As Mackenzie would tell you, once those flashlights start going off, boy, turn your other equipment on. You know, everything, REM pods, you know, EMF detectors, it goes nuts. And there was a guy in there with a camera, a big camera, and it was a really bright flash. And every time he took a picture in the dark, the activity would kind of taper off for a few minutes and start again. And so finally, you know, I had asked him, I said, you know, is the flash on this camera bothering you? And poof, flashlight went off. So I said, sir, would you please put your camera away? He did. Now understand, this guy was not drinking. He was not on any, you know, dope or medications, very normal Joe. And he came back, and then all of a sudden he leaned forward, and I looked up in his eyes. He had tears in his eyes. And he was saying, Padrick. He said, my God, you people left him here alone. Padrick. Fisk, Padrick needs help. And I'm going, Padrick, what kind of a name is that? And the guy was so upset. And Mackenzie, you know what I'm talking about. We physically drug this individual out,
Mhm.
and was so upset. He was weepy and teary for 2 days. We finally put him in touch with a medium to try and help work through this, because he was so upset about the experience. He wasn't a cynic, but he certainly didn't think like anything that would happen. And to be frank, neither did we. And it scared hell out of us. It didn't hurt him. It was just trying to put him in the situation that this character, this entity, was trying to talk about. And we did find that particular entity. Cindy used a term, about not necessarily being possessed, but staying in that moment in a paranormal sense, reliving it.
Mm-hmm.
And after she said that, the experience, Mac, that rang true. That's what happened with this guy. Padraig is Irish for Patrick.
Gotcha.
And we jumped into the books, and sure enough, here was a parentless family of 4, all 4 boys. The oldest was Padraig. And sadly enough, 4 of the 5 would die of the influenza shortly thereafter. And he said he couldn't get any help. They couldn't breathe. And that really scared hell out of me. And then, Mackenzie's incident, and then obviously what happened to you.
Well, we go in to that bachelor shack, and Cindy was picking up a lot. She was almost reticent to go in at first because it felt like it was almost spilling out of the building. And I take my partners very seriously when they are open about the sensing and what they're picking up. And we went in to face it, and she was picking up on so much energy, and then so many things started to come together. And as she's talking about the death that took place there, and this woman's kind of trying to deny her place in this murder and everything, I will tell you, up to that moment, I felt fine. I didn't have gas. I didn't have indigestion. I didn't even have a headache. I was just taking it all in. And bam, it felt like I don't know how, it's like an electric shock went right through me, stomach through my back. And it hurt so bad that I was sure something important had ruptured. And I hit the ground, seeing stars. I couldn't focus. I listening to the cries and screams. My voice is so high. I could have been a Michael and Jackson impersonator. I was hitting notes I didn't know I could hit. And I was guys, that was pure terror. I thought I was dying. I thought, oh no, this is it. And I'm going to cash out on a TV show. Well, we're going to get great ratings for this one. But
Dave Schrader's last moments.
He
puts
his all into his investigations.
And K.D. and Cindy was so alarmed at what was going on, and was alarmed at the crew and K.D. and myself and our directors. And she was just frantic because, again, she's very empathic. She's picking up on my pain. She's sure I'm dying. K.D. has military and medic background. He's checking me. My heart rate's through the roof. My hands are ice cold. I'm sweating. He's pretty sure I'm having a heart attack. We have security that had come, police that were on set off when they had seen us come in there. They'd come to make sure that nobody would interfere. They brought the police in, who immediately radioed in for ambulance. They helped me get outside because I thought I was going to puke, and I didn't want to vomit all over this ancient shack and have that ruined for everybody. I wanted to get outside. I did not want to die in that shack, and I didn't want to puke all over in that shack. So they took me outside, and it was like, once we got outside, it released like a really bad Charlie horse in your leg that makes you think, oh, this is how I die today. I have a Charlie horse that won't let go. It started to release, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm okay. And then I'm like, I'd keep feeling these waves, and I was dry heaving for a few minutes. Thankfully, they didn't show a lot of this, but it was affecting me enough to the fact that when the ambulance got there, they insisted I go to the hospital. And I was reluctant to do so because COVID was at a peak. Hospitals in Montana were being overrun by COVID cases. And I'm like, man, if this just turns out to be a case of indigestion and I'm going to put myself in the hospital, but I had to, and Cindy's in my face, you're going to get the ambulance and you're going to go to the hospital. Take care of yourself. Stop being stupid. And she, she lectured me, and I got on that ambulance and we were gone. Got in, got checked out. I was in there for it was like 5-6 hours. They ran every possible test they could and could not come up with anything physically wrong, which emotionally wrecked me. At one time, our director and producer Brian contacted me while I was in there, and I broke down talking to him over the phone. And he said, "Please let us know when you get out. I want to film you coming out. I want to talk to you about this if you're up for it. If you're not, just say pick me up if you're okay to talk." So I thought, okay. I kind of came down. I heard all these fascinating ghost stories from the members of the hospital, telling me about the haunted hospital, telling me about all the amazing stuff going on in their own homes, in their businesses, in their childhood homes, and in the hospital. So it kind of took my mind out of that. And as I go walking out again, that mortality strikes. And you'll see in that episode, they definitely pared it down. I got really emotional talking to them about that because I thought I was dead. I texted my kids and I'm like, I'm in the hospital. I love you all so much. You know, it was like a just in case. I wanted everybody to get my last words. And, you know, it wasn't going to be, I feel like something stabbed me. You know, I didn't want that to be my last words. So it shook me. I know. I love that people watch it, and I think they forget that this didn't just happen the second they watched it. Because I had people like messaging me, "Oh my God, I just saw you. Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I filmed this in September last year, so I'm alive. I'm fine." I was just out at the Michigan Paracon, and I showed the scene where I hit the ground, and the first question was, "Are you?" You know, I wish I could remember how she posed it, but it was like. It was like lightly, "Did you survive?" And I'm like, "I did not." And I'm here as a ghost today because I felt the obligation to show up. But we had a fun little time with that. That I would like to know, watching that happen, Mackenzie, especially after what had occurred to you, watching it, what was that like?
I I knew for one you're okay because I saw you after the fact.
Right.
But watching it, I was just stunned. I was like, I've never watched somebody drop to pain in this space, let alone I've never seen anything like it. So, and even watching multiple other ghost shows, watching and knowing you after interacting with you, knowing how real that was for you, it was hard to take in.
Well, especially in the patch, you know, we had that one other experience, and that was about it. You know, there's a dark figure, if I can say that. I don't want to go into any details that we've dealt with, but certainly nothing that would take you over like it did you. And if you know, if you remember, you know, and Mackenzie, it's a great haunt. It's one of the best, in my opinion, probably under the big sky. But that being said, never anything really that physically threatening, except for the one other time. And we didn't know about it, at least I didn't, until the next day. And they see that on the episode as well, as Mr. Peterson sat us down and said, "Hey, we had an incident last night." And he went into details. And I'm thinking, my God, you know, at the Cabbage Patch, and still we've got kids to go in there,
Right.
you know. So, yeah, it was scary, Dave. It was really scary.
Yeah. Well, and that was it. My mind was burning too, as I'm like, you know, I took a couple days off because I knew the team had things under wraps. I needed to kind of come to terms with it and get over the physical feeling, because that was overpowering to me. I've been knocked on my ass before on the Holzer files. This was a moment where it wasn't just I felt something shove me. This was I literally felt like I was on the precipice of death. And as we explore in this episode, we find out what happened. And I think what I did was walk into a place memory that is Cindy was
Place memory is that term.
right. When Cindy was tapping into the moment of the murder, you know, this reminds me of something. There's something called a shared deathbed experience. So, you know, Fisk is on his deathbed. Mackenzie, you go in to visit him. We've all heard that story of the guy looking up and seeing relatives, and we don't. We're just like, "Okay, Chris, you know, okay, buddy." And oh, my mom, and oh, Aunt Polly, what are you doing? Yeah. And you're sitting there. A shared deathbed experience is when Chris is seeing this and you turn, and sure as hell, there's somebody standing there. So I kind of feel like what Cindy was picking up on radiated and created some strength, some energy to this moment. And I was in a vulnerable position. I had opened myself up on the Curse of Lizzie Borden special inadvertently and had not learned to close down yet. So I think I was still wide open for something like this. And that hit me. I think I was treated to the last moments of Richard Sims live to know what that fear, that terror, and that pain that hit me like a wave. It was bad. I've got now as we go in, I love the fact that you come in with your wolf pack information, Chris. They're telling you what happened. Cindy was like Sherlock Holmes, man. She was a dog with looking for a bone. She was digging through your paperwork as you guys are trying to talk through what's going on, and you start talking about these things that are happening. And Richard came through. Does this make sense? No, not off the top of your head.
Yeah.
You're not familiar with this story. And when Cindy, now it makes it, of course, in the episode makes it look like it's 8 seconds in, and she's like, aha. But I mean, obviously there was a long discussion that got chopped down to get to the point where she sees Richard Sims' name in that newspaper. We do have a couple, thankfully. One of the followers sent me these papers. This is from the Montana Standard, and if you look to the bottom, it says, scolded by mother, young white girl now is sorry she fatally shot Negro. I like that it takes her mom yelling at her to make her realize maybe shooting Richard Sims was not
wrong.
Yeah, this wasn't the best plan. White girl answers for killing her Negro lover. That was another one of the headlines that screamed at the top of the time. State will not ask for the death penalty for Elaine Harrington. Trial opens here today. She shot a Negro. Just showing again that it's kind of like this throwaway part of society. It's not like she shot a white guy. She shot a Negro. We're not really going to go for the death penalty in this case, which is brutal. Brutal. Each article talking about it. And here we go. In this article, it talks about what's going on. And the Harrington woman has been in the county jail since October 5th when she shot her lover. The shooting occurred in Pete O'Hara's soft drink cabin. That's an interesting term to call it. Soft drink.
Soft drink. I don't know if there were soft drinks in Butte at that time ever, even during Prohibition.
No.
The interesting thing about that and the way the press handled it during that time period in history, you notice they said Negro and they mentioned Harrington, okay? But they didn't mention his name in the headline. Right. So when you talk about the sadness of racism and the Expendables, this was one of those cases. And historically, when you hit the ground, I sent it out to the Wolfpack up at the archives, and the Wolfpack and Jav, they put all that material in that file, and then Brian sat us down very quickly. And I didn't have a chance to go through all those articles. And as you recall, during the hunt, which I didn't know until I watched the episode Sunday, that they were picking up on Richard. And when I heard that, I went, oh my God, no wonder she, hit on that so aggressively. The fact that it was in Pete O'Hara's cabin, I don't want to say was surprising. It really wasn't. He was a notorious character, King of the Patch, known for his violence. And the reason they had a King for the Patch, and I think folks should know this, the area was so violent that there was not necessarily an appointed, but there was a king or queen of the patch. And they took care of a lot of the regulating, so the local police officers didn't. I mean, they have reports historically of people, bodies being dragged to the outside, and that way they would just get them to the morgue. No stories, nothing. A dead body found on Arizona or on Utah. Pete O'Hare, he was one of the heavy knuckles of the patch. I don't want to get into it, but one of the most violent, believe it or not, was a female queen of the patch. And this is the worst neighborhood in Butte, violent. And to have someone like Pete O'Hare, he took care of the problems where the local officials didn't have to. And when she wound up in Pete O'Hare's, I mean, we're talking the preacher's daughter here, had a love affair with an individual who was black. I can only imagine the scandalous level at that in Butte at that time. And then to wind up in Pete O'Hare's cabin, the preacher's daughter, well, it's a preacher's daughter, and she shot a black man. That's how life is going to continue.
Kimberly Ware pops up. Poor Richard, he needs to be acknowledged respectfully. And that's what we tried to do by setting this story straight, by digging the name Richard Sims out. Now, I want to share with you guys, as I like to do on this series, some behind the scenes stuff. Our producer, our showrunner, Brian Peterson, had gone out there when they were scouting and doing some what they call B-roll. That's shooting the outsides of the shacks, doing the overhead shots. And one of the producers, one of the producers on set, saw something glinting in the sun in the grass and looked down and picked it up. And this is weird. This is, again, before the name Richard comes up. And there in the grass is this
Pendant.
charm. Yeah. And it's,
Oh my goodness.
it's an African-American man engraved on this heart-shaped pendant. And when you flip it over, the name on it is Richard.
Richard.
Oh my goodness.
Now, it's a different last, I think it's Mayfield. But the fact that we're leading into this synchronicity in this was uncanny, and it blew Cindy away. That this piece showed up, that we found this piece right outside of the area where Richard Sims lost his life. And again, just crazy synchronicity that something like this would take place.
You notice it's in the shape of a heart, Dave?
Right.
And all indications, Richard was wonderful. He had a very good heart. And if you're going to pick a true victim out of all of this, it was Richard. And the finding of that heart, we know a gal by the name of Miss Ellen Baumler, quite famous in the kind of the field of history and hauntings in Butte. She wrote a series of books called Spirit Tailings and Montana Thrillers and Chillers, but she describes those experiences as spirit tailings. In other words, something is leaving a message for you to find. Not necessarily that there's, unanswered questions, but that something wants you to know that they're there. And it's a very peaceful, passive way of doing that. That was mind-boggling when they found that.
Right.
And of course, I didn't know it until even after they told us what happened to you.
Right. And what's interesting with that piece now, it's one of those druthers. I wish they would have shown when the guy brought it to us and showed us this piece. But, they're like, the audience is going to automatically assume this is a plant. They're not going to, they're going to think, oh, yeah, just so happen to find this. So, I understood the production company's stance on this and not showing that aspect. But like I said, I like to bring the behind the scenes stories, things that didn't make the final episode cut. And again, folks, you can't be mad at production company. They have a story to tell in 42 minutes. And as I was told on Holzer Files, there would be times that Cindy, Shane, or I would look at an episode and we're like, but what about? And they would say to me, that was a fascinating tidbit that really had nothing to do with the main story. Yeah. And although it's an amazing synchronicity, what 30 seconds would you have removed to tell that story? Yeah, true. And it made sense, because it's like, you don't want to mess with the template. And, so I'll just share them on moments like this. And so I wanted to do that. We got in there and we have people asking, were there blessings done? How is it done? First of all, watch the episode. You'll get that answer. But yes, there were blessings. As a matter of fact, there were multiple. When we went in to do the main investigation, I want to wrap this up quickly just so I can make sure we can introduce KD and talk about a few things as well. KD was getting the messages that they wanted help. They wanted a blessing. They wanted acknowledgement. The voices from the Cabbage Patch rose in a way that they didn't want to be forgotten. They didn't want it to just be Pete O'Hara's story or Elaine's story. They wanted everybody to be reminded of, there was so many people here. This was such a bigger story than what we're giving credit for. And that's why I'm sure we're probably not done with the Cabbage Patch yet. If we do get to come back, I would guess. I mean, I could be wrong. There's certainly enough other stories. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Cabbage Patch revisits us during our, if we get a chance to come back and do more. But we went there, we gave voice, which is our goal. We want to let the voices speak for the spirits that have been forgotten, to kind of rest in this overlording imagery, this, whether you believe he's still there, Pete O'Hara, the king of the Cabbage Patch, the axe man who would carry an axe handle and belt you with it without even thinking twice, beat you down and then move on. His spirit, his memory is strong enough there. And the name, right? It's interesting. There's an old proverb that says that we die 3 times, once when we physically die, once when we're put into the ground, and the final time is when our name is spoken for the last time. And Pete O'Hara continues to live on because people keep talking about the king of the Cabbage Patch. Yet all those that were under him, all those poor lost souls that came and went, were forgotten. And I'm so glad that Richard's story got told, and that although we couldn't bring him justice in his life, I hope in the afterlife he feels that his story was told the right way, and that the preacher's daughter isn't the victim in this case. And Richard Sims hopefully now can go to rest. We did have a Methodist minister who came into town, worked with us to kind of do that. I went in and did another different kind of clearing prayer to kind of do a binding and banishment, and hope that would work as well.
And one thing I don't think they showed on the show was I pulled Cindy aside, and I was like, when we were there with all the kids, I pulled her aside and I was like, hey, I just want to make sure that me and the spirits are on the same base. Will you make sure that they're okay and that they know that we're okay, so we're on the same level? And she immediately was like, they already know. They are on the same page as you. They're ready to help with the kids. And just like you said, they want their stories told. And it was just amazing.
Dave, I'm just curious if Mackenzie and I can ask you a question. Is that all right? It's your show.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
We do know, you're one of the top paranormal investigators in the country, if not one of the best known in the world. And you've seen so many hauntings. How would you rank the Cabbage Patch? Is it unique? Is it, as far as hauntings are concerned?
Well, I'm biased, I felt it firsthand. I got to live that scary moment for myself. So the haunting there was very palpable, in many different ways. You could just sense spirits around. And again, not being a psychic or medium, even KD was drawn to certain areas because he just knew something was going on. That's why I think he was so good at getting the hits on the spirit box that he was using, his ink box. We were getting immediate communication because the spirits demanded to be heard. They wanted to speak. They wanted somebody to tell their story. So I'm glad that we were able to participate in that. And we would not have allowed, which sounds weird because it sounds like we were overlording the three of us, we wouldn't have allowed kids in that night to the patch if we didn't feel that it had been handled properly and that the preacher and the closing hadn't been done right. And just, I want to give people a chance to see a little bit of the aftermath. This was at the party, Cindy talking to some of the kids. Yeah, we've got some great pictures. Yeah, K.D. throwing the horns with a couple of the kids out there enjoying the patch, and K.D. stayed and did a little ghost hunting with the kids to show them there's nothing to be afraid of. I told a couple of fun ghost stories. Look at that kid. Look at that kid in that picture I'm standing next to. Handsome fella, handsome little guy. But we had such a wonderful time talking to the kids. And, they were so loving and respectful to us, and I believe to the spirits. And that night went without issue, correct?
Correct. They had a wonderful time. And the fact that you guys were there, just made it that much more meaningful to them.
Especially coming out of COVID.
Yeah, no kidding. Being locked in your basement for a year can really stretch on you. And these kids were excited to be there, and you guys made it that much more exciting. And, it's not like watching a TV show. I mean, this was legit. Here are these, the top of the food chain, and these guys get to be a part of it. And as you found out, they knew who you were. They knew who Cindy was and KD. And so they were completely thrilled. And, Mackenzie is wonderful at making that connection between the hauntings and the history. And, when they make that connection, my gosh, that's 100%. That's knocking it out of the park because they remember it. And because you were there and the experiences that the kids had living homeless, now they take ownership in it. They understand the importance of that history, and they love the haunting of it.
Awesome. Well, talking about being locked in your basement, when it comes to being in that position, there's only one guy we trust, ladies and gentlemen. K.D. Stafford is with us. How you doing, K.D.?
I'm actually locked in my basement currently as we speak.
See, he actually chooses. folks.
Yes.
He chooses to be in that situation.
It's weird.
Yeah, let's, as a matter of fact, let's show. This is KD's cave, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Bat Cave that's
Yeah,
down
man.
inside our church headquarters. I think it's funny. We have this beautiful, brilliant church, all these rooms, all this area. KD heads right to the dark, dank, creepy ass basement to make his home.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's drawn there, man. You know, something just draws me there. You know, speaking of things that didn't make it, that we couldn't really follow through with every single lead we got.
Right.
When I was cleaning the basement out down there, getting my lab ready. I was sweeping the like cobblestones off. There was a cobblestone pathway that went through there, and there was a shiny railroad token from like 1880 something, right there, sitting on top of one of those cobblestones under the dirt. And you know, I traced this place down, and it used to sit where the high school sits now. So
That's amazing.
The address and everything was right on it.
And is it interesting, KD, that one of our stories takes us to the railway?
Oh,
So it seemed there was a lot of foreshadowing throughout our series that the spirits were definitely trying to get our attention to things. See,
yeah.
KD's down in the basement. Here's where I felt home, in the
Yes.
nice, brightly lit, comfortable headquarters area without
The
giant
war room.
spiders and dust and black mold of the basement. That's KD's environment. I'll let him Batman it up down there all day long. So, Mackenzie, I want to thank you for coming back on and sharing some of your stories with us and insights.
Yeah, of course.
And for being a part of that and not being afraid to share and allow our camera crew to film your experience. So thank you for doing that.
thanks,
Yeah,
Matt.
of course.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Mackenzie,
telling
Fisk.
my story.
Oh,
You got
It's
it.
good to see you.
Good to see y'all
Good seeing
too.
you.
Yeah.
And
I will
Fisk,
say, KD,
I love it.
Yep.
I will say-
There we go. There we go.
I didn't
Spooks
get
and
any equipment
spirits.
from you. Fisk
Well,
got it.
you know, okay,
You
I
never
gave
gave me
the
anything.
microcom to Fisk to share with you.
mhm.
Oh, so that's why it says
Oh.
to my friend Fisk.
God dang it, busted.
Well, Mackenzie, I'm working on getting.
Well,
the
Fisk wasn't afraid to
PGG2
ask.
from
Well,
it.
no, Fisk didn't ask. I just gave it to him. He didn't ask. He said, man, I sure would like to get one of your radios one day. I said, okay. I in my head, I said, I'll make that happen. And I did before I left. So
You did
Perfect.
well, we
great.
can get you hooked up, Mackenzie. Don't worry.
Awesome.
All right. And for people
Dave,
that would
thank
like
you
to
for
get hooked
having
up
us.
with KD and get some equipment, we have a link in today's program guide as well. So you can go and order
Great.
some of the cool pieces that you see on the episodes. But Mackenzie, we'll make sure that you're taken care of. Thanks for being here with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Dave,
care.
thank you.
Hi, y'all.
You got it, Fisk.
Well,
Thank
Fisk,
you for
man.
being here.
Yeah, with us, Fisk?
How
Okay.
you doing, KD?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have recovered from our experience a year ago, but you made such a great impression on Butte and our kids and the hauntings. Your equipment is unreal. I'm just curious, when you come up with this kind of material that you use in your hunts, do you like lay down at night and have nightmares of how to figure this stuff out? You know, the
Well,
PGG2,
no, I mean-
the smoke machine, the laser, that was incredible.
It's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot of like researching things that have been done before and trying to modernize some of it and bring it up to date. But yeah, I mean, you know, I do stay up at night trying to think of stuff sometimes. So
Yeah,
Well,
your lair looked like it.
it was a job.
That's a good lead in, KD, because we're going to go back in time all the way to episode 1, right? And in episode 1, there was a piece of evidence that did not make the final cut. And I understand why. It's a darker piece, but I'm excited to share something with you on this. So let's go back. It was in the bathroom when we were doing the experiment with the laser. And give me the name of that piece of equipment again. It's called the
PGG. We named it in the
Photonic?
first, photonic ghost generator. Yeah, we named it Morgan City, but it got custom fitted for this situation.
So basically, it's giving a blanket of what is that, smoke? How do you?
So it's fog and
Fog.
The original idea was to add some electrical charge to it and everything, and the laser is actually being modulated by sound, right? And it's hooked up to a but the sound is hooked up to like a germanium diode, right? So it's like a crystal radio visualizer, sort of.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense at all.
No, it's creating a template of energy for the spirit to make themselves known on. Now, people have pointed out to me, they watched the episode, they saw something move in there, but we did not have a clear enough shot to show. But you did take a photograph that we saw at the time, and this is it. Now, I know this image is not, for those of you listening, again, go check it out. And I'll put these pictures up on my YouTube page so that you can go see them. This was the original picture, and so I decided to lighten it up a little bit. That's the only thing I did, was lighten it. And when I lightened it up, you'll suddenly see up in the kind of upper left quadrant, you'll see this cowboy face with the kind of big handlebar mustache coming through the light. So that was what stood out to us. And what was interesting is during the day earlier, when we were kind of getting the history about it, you started drawing and you ended up drawing a figure that looked very much like what we ended up catching in this experience.
Yeah, like as we were sitting down, and we were doing our history meeting with Fisk, I was just kind of doodling in the off time, and then Fisk brings out this picture, and it's like, whoa, these two guys are, and then we got this, and it was like, yeah.
And now we believe this might have been Van Zandt, who had the same kind of mustache and look to him. I'm going to show, this is a little bit of a closer image so people can see it. Give your eyes a few seconds. Now, again, could it be pareidolia? It could be. But the fact is there's pretty prominent eyes, nose, the mustache, the cheeks and filler. But what caught me, KD, and I thought you'd be excited about this, when I lightened it up, I noticed something in the shaft of light. When we were at that moment communicating with Van Zandt, and we had already visited with his wife, Amy, who was trying to combine with him. If you look in this image, underneath Van Zandt, down to the right, you'll see what appears to be a woman with her hair pulled back in a bun.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. I think I was like excited at the time because of the one that just stood out so clearly. But now that I look at it again, I could definitely see that.
I think we might have captured Van Zandt and his wife, which is exactly what we hoped for.
Right.
That they are together. Yeah. So that was cool. Again,
if we would have caught that earlier, they might have included it.
Right. And, like you said, you take a picture, and this is not your typical paranormal show where we do all this, we catch it all, and then we get to go down, break it down. It's kind of like in the moment we're dealing with it and showing you what we're catching in the moment.
Very organic.
This was one. Yeah. We happened to just, again, I lightened it up today to see the face, and that woman with the bun in her hair jumped out at me. Again, there's kind of a closer image of it. I did send it over, K.D., just before we did the show. I sent it over to our showrunner, producer Brian Peterson, and he was like, "Holy God, how did we miss this?" So I'm glad I'm not hallucinating this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So now, KD, before we jump into a kind of sneak peek for next week, I want to know, in this experience, you're outside during our baseline, you're getting hit after hit after hit off of your spirit box. And you said, is anybody else in danger? And you hear my name come through.
Yeah.
Did you feel like at that moment this was something just trying to intimidate?
I did because it said a lot of, particularly in that spot, it was saying a lot of violent things to me, and a lot of threats. And so I thought that it was just maybe another threat, or it was trying to like reach out and really let me know that, hey, I know who you're with. I know who I can hurt to hurt you, maybe. And so I thought it may be an empty threat. I get those a lot in this line of work, but yeah.
Right.
Turns out,
we always hear these threats, right? We always get these ghostly kind of, I'll beat you, I'll kill you.
Evil.
Right. You get these
this, that, and the other. Yeah.
It's like, all right, stop trying to spook us off. But explain to me what your thoughts are. And we're going to go a little long tonight, maybe another 5-6 minutes here, folks. But explain to me your thoughts when you suddenly heard me squeal like a pig coming from in the cabin.
I didn't know exactly where you guys were. Like we split up when we first went into the patch, right? And I went this way and you guys went the other way. And so it was completely pitch black. I just hear Dave's down. Dave needs help. So I run out and I'm like, okay, I can't see my hand in front of my face out here, even with the camera guys, and they were trying to keep up. But I didn't know what happened. I didn't even put it together that the box just said your name when I asked the question, and it said your name. And then I didn't even put that together that it was going to like literally attack you right at that moment. But it appears to have been the case, right? And it was like a moment of total confusion, obviously. I mean, because even though we know we can run into these things that can physically hurt us, we don't. We expect it, but you don't. I mean, you don't expect it until it happens, right? So
there was a definite energy shift in this case that was unlike anything I'd ever been through before, and it was weird because I want to mention one other thing, Fisk. I don't think you even know this, and I'll get to the question from Yo Mama in our chat for KD in a second. But one thing that during the main investigation that they did not show was, you saw me. I said, I'm going to start off in here. I want to kind of ground myself before I go in. And at one point, Cindy was feeling like there was something threatening. And I radioed in, I'll come in. And she said, no, you need to stay where you are because this thing is mad and it knows you're vulnerable. And it was tough. You're the lead investigator. You want to charge in there.
Yeah.
Not allow this thing to feel like it has control over you. But when Cindy is telling me, Dave, no, sit, roll over, good boy, I was like, whatever, I stopped in my place and I sat there and I watched because I respect my teammates. And when my teammates,
especially Cindy,
right?
Yeah.
When they warn you,
cases, she means 2 cases. That's it. Just pick 2. Let's go.
Exactly. Yo Mama wants to know, KD, are you a sensitive? Or do you capture any evidence through your equipment? You seem so intuitive with your questioning. That's a good point. Do you think that you're kind of getting that vibe before it even says those answers, and the machine is just attuned to you?
I think I'm starting to think that there might be something to that. I never thought I had any kind of psychic ability or anything, but I think using the equipment probably has. It's either a couple things. It could be like a new kind of psychic phenomenon, like where you interact through electronics more efficiently with the other side, or it could be, that could be like almost like a stepping stone to learning how to use your. I don't know. I do feel like I've developed more of an intuitive side though since I've started doing this, and with the drawing and stuff too. That's like a talent that I have anyway, and it just kind of comes out. So. Maybe.
I don't doubt that at all, because watching you and watching the way you work, we talked about this a few weeks ago when I had you on about imprinting on your equipment, and using it over and over seems to give you better connection with the equipment, with the spirit realm.
Building it probably has something to do with that too. Like,
right.
It's like a enchantment sort of.
And next week we do a new experiment in episode 3. That's coming up, the monster in the mine, and it's I just got one still picture I want to show for it.
Oh yeah,
yes,
that's like an epic. That's an epic picture.
Yeah, it looks like something out of Clockwork Orange, to be honest with you.
Band,
yeah,
or like an album cover maybe, or something.
I think it also looks like the shadow of Doctor Who's TARDIS is surrounding me, but
right.
I will say I'm not necessarily thrilled with the look, because I do kind of look like Homer Simpson sitting in that chair with 2 ping pong balls over my eyes.
Say that, I hadn't thought that. Oh, God.
I can kind of relate to that look, Dave.
Yeah, well, I know. Be a big bald guy sitting in a chair with ping pong ball eyes. All right, so we'll talk about that experiment next week. KD's going to come back for the full episode, and we have a special guest that will also join us. And we're going to talk about next week's episode, The Monster in the Mine. Cindy will be with us soon. Don't worry. I've got some plans in mind for her, because I want to talk about some really interesting elements, but I want this to build. I talked about this being this episode number 2, the Axeman, being one of the most physically compelling pieces of experiences I've ever had. And it certainly, people ask, are you okay? Listen, in Holzer Files, I have a scar still on my back from one of my encounters. mentally, I still have a sense of this thing because it was so painful. I feel like I lived that second of that man's death, and that leaves an indelible mark. But in episode 3, The Monster in the Mine, when K.D. hooks me up like a lab rat, beaming laser beams and stuff, we'll talk about.
He was just sitting there like, I was like, okay, here we go.
Let's do this. We have quite the experience, but we are called next week to the Hennessy House. And it is a fantastic place, crazy. And I don't think you've seen this yet, Fisk. Let's now show a sneak peek for next week. Ghosts of Devil's Perch. This is Monster in the Mine.
I really feel some really bad stuff happened in this place. I'm telling you, some bad stuff went down here.
Did you just hear that? Dude, that just happened again. It was another loud. All right, you got our attention. All right, hold on. Let me do an EVP sweep. I don't want to pick up any other extra voices on this. All right, let's begin. Listen, we're here out of respect. We're not here to bring you any harm. Why are you being threatening?
Who are you?
What are you doing here?
Who are you?
What are you doing here?
Oh.
Who are you?
What are you doing here?
I got her. I'll get you too.
That's coming up this Sunday
Oh
on
my
Travel
God.
Channel and
never
Discovery
seen
Plus.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this place is off the charts. We get poltergeist activity, live intelligent interaction, residual hauntings.
Wow.
Fisk, this place is nuts. There is so much going on in this episode and so many different aspects of the hauntings and the tragedy that is surrounding this place. We've
That's
got
incredible.
a killer. We've got a boy spirit. We've got so many other weird things, and truly one of the most emotional. Crazy. Yeah, this is one of the most emotionally charged episodes. I'm sorry, K.D. I got to see this episode in whole. They did me a favor by cutting out just how shattered I was, but this leaves me emotionally destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, you were. I mean, I haven't known you forever, but I will say that's the most upset I've ever seen you in the amount of time we worked together, and we worked together a lot. Yeah. So, and by that point, we had already worked together a lot.
Right. So check it out. That's coming up this Sunday on Travel Channel at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Pacific. And that is, I think, 8 p.m. Or was it 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Yeah, let me do this again. 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, and 8 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. I think
7 o'clock
Pacific, something like that. So it's on up that way.
Words are hard. I agree.
Words is hard. So check it out. That's coming up. K.D. will be back with me next Tuesday, and we'll re-examine and recap episode number 3 of the series and take a look inside the experiments, inside what happened. We'll go a little deeper. We have a special guest that I'm excited to bring in that I think is going to be a surprise for K.D. as well. So we'll be doing that. That's right. I brought the ghost that communicates with me. Wow. He's going to be. Yeah, exactly. So check that out. And for those of you that are fans of the Paranormal 60, we'll be back this Friday. The Paranormal News Crew is quickly collecting new news stories to share with you from all around the world. That's Friday night live right here on the YouTube channel. And for those of you listening to the podcast, you can subscribe to our podcast and never miss another episode of the best in paranormal programming. Or you can also watch it right here on YouTube. Rate and review no matter what you do, but make sure to check out the ghosts of Devil's Perch. We'll be back again next week with another recap episode here on the Paranormal 60.